Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the new Harbor Freight 3-ton low profile long reach jack that I recently bought at Harbor Freight. There's some new additions that they've done to the jack to kind of differentiate it from the old one, namely the one that was caught up in the Snap-on Harbor Freight lawsuit. So we're going to take a look at this thing and see how it works around the shop. Let's get into it. So I needed this specific low profile jack for two reasons. Number one reason is I needed a jack that went low enough that I could get under the front cross member of this car to jack it up from, because that's the best manipulation point. When this car's on its suspension, the front cross member is very low, maybe 4 or 5 inches off the ground, so I needed a jack that I could really get under there and have enough room to kind of manipulate and get it where I wanted. Reason number two is that jack's got a bunch of lift, meaning that it'll lift the car very high, and I need that because I need something that I can comfortably get the car up high enough to put the milk crates underneath the suspension. You've probably seen them before. They're just a bunch of 2x4s stacked together and screwed together that the wheels sit on. And I'm gonna use that to do like under car work, like the exhaust and things like that. The things you gotta do before you have a lift in your shop. Alright, so that's with the handle. That works good. Let's try that foot pedal. Okay, so there's not a lot of leverage on the foot pedal, obviously, and that's kind of just more for getting it in position, which is cool. Let's back that sucker up just a touch. Oh yeah, the effort on this is really low, so that's nice. If you look really hard, you can see the recalled Harbor Freight jacks that the car's sitting on. All right, let's see how much lift this thing gets. Okay, it looks good on the cross member. The stands under there for safety. This is good, I can clean under there too, it's nasty. Oh yeah. Okay, check this out. This is something that's noteworthy. I just went over these seams in the concrete and I was a little worried about them. But it did just fine. Those back wheels are of a diameter that it doesn't get stuck in the little seam in the concrete. That's rad. Okay. Obviously, as it gets higher, it gets easier because that fulcrum point is closer, or that leverage point is closer to the fulcrum, so like less resistance is kind of experienced. Man, look at this thing. That is like super high. And if I had my crates under the wheel, I could almost sit up underneath that. That is super high. Still going. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're coming down. Plenty high. Nice and slow. So one thing that I think is important to talk about, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, is that when this jack goes all the way up, or close to all the way up, that arm, basically the point between where it's taking the load and the fulcrum point back here, those two get really close. So no longer do you have like this long extended arm with all this weight on it. So as this car gets really high, or whatever you're jacking up gets really high, the felt effort on that jack handle is extremely low. So I think that if you're not careful, or if you're kind of just lackadaisical about what you're doing, when you get that thing way up there, you could get yourself in trouble. So that's something to really keep an eye on, is understand that the higher this thing goes, the easier it gets. So that might trick you into thinking, hey, this is no big deal or whatever, because you got a lot more felt effort when it's low, but when it gets way up, a lot less felt effort. So be careful if you get this jack and you expect to jack things way up, because remember, it's gonna get light, it's gonna get easy, you might hurt yourself. Jack stands always. so after looking at this thing and kind of using it for a little while, the build quality on this thing's super nice. All this plate is nice and thick. It's like 1/4 inch at least. Everything rolls really good. I don't know if there's bearings in there. There might be bearings in these wheels. I don't know, probably bushings. But anyways, it rolls real nice. It's super serviceable. It's got a grease zerk right here. Let's take it up and take a look underneath. Mine has a little bit of air in it. I can feel it. It probably needs to be bled. Okay, so the ram looks typical Chinese quality ram. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it looks like it came on a boat. And by that, I don't mean it's like rusted or anything. It just looks typical for China. It looks like one cotter pin holding the ram onto a sleeve here. And these are at least 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit bigger. Dual springs, and it's dual piston in the back. So I think that's how it gets so much more leverage per pump, is it's got 2 pistons pushing the fluid into the ram. So that's really nice. One thing that I think is kind of strange, I haven't had a jack that's done this before, but this one you can't really take the pad off. I mean, you probably could. I think it's bolted from the bottom, or maybe this pad is glued and there's a nut or a bolt underneath it. But I like to have access to this because I use these jacks for everything. And I will make a cradle for transmission that I can just pop in here and then, you know, strap a transmission to it, whatever. That way I can work from underneath the car and put a transmission in a car. So this not being able to come off, not a huge deal, but something I'm going to modify on mine for sure. Okay, onto the back end of the jack. These casters, I made mention of it earlier. The diameter of the wheel, although it doesn't look too large, it's big enough to roll over these seams in the concrete, which is a big deal. Because as you're jacking on a concrete floor or whatever, the jack needs to move around, and if it gets stuck in here and you keep jacking it, oh boy, if you keep manipulating the jack, you could slip off of the jack because the jack doesn't move anymore. Hey guys, one more thing to think about is I want to talk about the load rating of this jack. It's 3 tons, so that's 6,000 pounds. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't work on a vehicle that's heavier than 6,000 pounds. It just means you can't jack the entire thing up at one point anyways, which you'd never do. So if you think about it, you're typically jacking a vehicle either from the front, both the front wheels off, so you're taking roughly half the weight, depending on the geometry of where you have it jacked up. So a 6, 7, or 8,000 pound vehicle is really not out of the question of a working load for this jack. Just be smart with what you do. Don't maybe like jack a tractor up or something. I don't know, maybe do jack a tractor. Actually, don't jack a tractor. Don't mess with tractors. Anyways, this is totally acceptable for something like my car. My car without an engine in it is probably 2,000 pounds. So I could literally jack the entire car up from this jack. 6,000 pound rating, 3 tons, no problem. But just be smart about what you're doing, think about it, and yeah, no big deals here. 3 tons, that's a lot of weight. Hey guys, so overall, my opinions of this jack is super favorable, especially for the price. It's like 200 bucks. Keep in mind, I know Harbor Freight has like the 20% off coupons. They don't go for these jacks. I tried it, they said no. It's in the fine print, sir. It's in the fine print. But really, an excellent jack. From what I've read, it's actually made in the same, or was made in the same factory as the Snap-on ones that go for like 600 or 700 bucks. But this is the one. For 200 bucks, you get all that lift. It's super serviceable. I like the Zerks. The front wheels, if they're not bearings, it's got a really good bushing in it. They're tight, they roll well. Let's see, the back wheels are of a diameter that rolls over little imperfections, which I really like. I dug that. Some other points noteworthy. Remember, I talked about that fulcrum thing, so watch out for that. This jack, the higher it goes, the easier it gets, so it could fool you. So that's kind of, it's not a down point. It's just something to be aware of. You know, whenever you're operating anything, you kind of need to know the limitations of it. I think that's one that's probably pretty important to know about. Yeah, so it goes up to 24 1/4, and it goes down to 3 1/4, which is awesome. Like I said, the front end of this car is about 4 inches off the ground, so this is perfect for if you have a lowered car. But anyways, go get you one. It's high value for the money. I mean, it's hard to beat. Really, it is hard to beat. And something that's constructed like this, I've got no doubt that this thing will probably last as long as I do. Maybe at one point it'll need a ram, but everything's totally serviceable. You pop it apart, you get on the old interwebs, you fire up a new ram from China, and because you know, the way that the Chinese do it, this ram's probably in everything. So pretty generic. Not gonna be hard to get if you gotta replace it. But yeah, I mean, this is a really good deal. I don't buy a lot of things at Harbor Freight, but I kind of buy a lot of things from China and then kind of think of them like as a kit, like, hey, I can improve it this way. Like my bead roller, there's a video on that if you want to take a look. That's from the big boat. But anyways, it's a good option here if you're looking for a floor jack. Highly recommended. Harbor Freight, Daytona, low profile, long range 3-ton jack. Do it. Rabbit bomb. Get you some.